Hey guys, welcome to yet another video by Scaler. So in this particular session, we're going to look into HTML interview questions. So before we move on with the video, please make sure to subscribe to Scaler's channel so that you don't miss our upcoming videos, and also leave a like if you enjoy our content. And if you have any queries, leave a comment down below and we would address them all. So now let's understand what will be covered in this session. So we'll be starting with the very basic questions, obviously, and also we'll look into questions from HTML and also HTML5. So first of all, what is HTML? HTML is called Hypertext Markup language, and it is basically one of the first things you learn if you want to become a web developer. So more questions will be coming up in this particular session. Now, without any delays, let's get started.
Hey everyone, so let's start with the questions themselves. So as I told you, there would be two different parts, HTML questions and HTML5 questions. So we're going to cover a total of 20 questions, right, in this particular session. If you want more questions, you can go check out that blog, which I already mentioned, the interview bit blog, which will be available in the description box below. But again, for an even better and in-depth understanding of the answers, please watch this video first, and then you can go ahead and check it out for more questions. So now let's start with the very basic, that is introduction to HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is a standard text formatting language used for developing web pages, released in 1993. It was released in 1993, and it's basically the standard text formatting language. HTML is a language that is interpreted by the browser, and it tells the browser what to display and how to display it, right? So if you open any web page, so you would wonder, why is the text to the left side, or why is it to the right side? Why is there an image in the center? Or how exactly are they formed? How exactly are they structured? So you use HTML to do that exact thing, right? That's what HTML does, and that's where it comes into place. HTML is an important language to learn if anyone wants to work in a web development domain. Web designers, web developers, and again, HTML alone is not sufficient. You will have to know other things, because HTML only defines the structure of the data that will be rendered on the browser in a web page. To make it visually appealing and to make it functional, you will have to use other things like CSS and JavaScript. HTML just creates the structure of the data on the web page, and to make that structure look better or feel better for the user when they are entering the website, you will have to use other tools such as CSS, JavaScript, and there are more to it, right? Yes. So now this is a sample HTML code, piece of HTML code, doc type HTML. So what exactly is doc type? This particular line tells that this piece of code is actually HTML5, right? So this piece of code is actually HTML5 or HTML. So this is what exactly it says, what kind of document type it is. HTML. Most of the tags have closing tags. There are some tags which do not have closing tags. They are called void tags, but again, you don't have to worry about them. They are only used in certain cases. But in general, when you're using the HTML tag, right? So the opening tag and the closing tag. So opening tag will be like this. It will be a lesser than sign, HTML greater than, or it could be greater than sign, HTML lesser than. So whatever you consider that as, and then sorry, and then the closing tag would be just a slash in front of it, and that would be considered as the closing tag. So within these two tags, you can include other stuff. You can include the head tag, the body tag, and within the body tag, you can include so many other tags which will basically decide the structure of the program. In this case, they're including p, which basically means a paragraph tag, which is used to obviously enter text, and there is another img tag, which is image tag, and then src basically is attributes. Align is also an attribute. So why do you need attributes? So attributes is what decides what will go within that particular tag. So p states that it's going to be a paragraph, but align center is going to align the text to the center of the web page. And then source equal to image path.jpg. So this will basically provide the image path, and that's how HTML gets the image and shows it on the web page. This is a sample piece of code. So now let's start with the first question. Are the HTML tags and elements the same thing? No, HTML elements are defined by starting tag, may contain some content, and a closing tag. For example, HTML tags are just the tags, okay? For example, h1 opening tag, heading 1 is the text written in between it, and then closing tag, same thing, h1 is the element, because it is consisting of both the starting and ending tags with some content inside of it. So that put together is called an element. But when you're just talking about tags, that is h1, just h1 is a tag. H1 slash h1 is also a tag, but one is a starting tag, one is the ending tag. Element is a complete line with using these tags, and HTML starting and closing tags are basically individual tags. Okay. The next question, what are tags and attributes in HTML? So tags are the primary component of HTML that defines how the content will be structured or formatted, whereas attributes are used along with the HTML tags to define the characteristics of the element. So again, tags, as I already told you, these are the most common or the most basic components of an HTML code. That's because, why is it common? Because every single thing which you're going to enter, let's say it could be a text, it could be an image, it could be a video, doesn't matter, everything will be within a tag, right? It'll be within a tag. If it's not within a tag, HTML wouldn't understand what exactly is the requirement for this particular piece of line. So if you just don't use a tag and just write the path of the video, HTML will think it's just random text and just print the text on the web page. But if you want it to be an image, then you'll have to use the img tag in order for the browser to understand that in this case you want to show an image on the browser, right? For example, p align center interview questions, closing tag of p. So in this case, align is the attribute because it is saying that this particular p tag's content should be center aligned. Okay, so that's basically attribute. Tag, I already explained. Attributes are extra features or extra things you want to say to the browser for that particular piece of output which will be shown in the web page, right? In this case, you're using an attribute called align, which is saying center. So that basically makes the interview questions, which is the content of this p tag, to be in the center of the web page, and that's exactly what it achieves. Okay, so now moving on to the third question. What are HTML entities? So in HTML, some characters are reversed like these tags, greater than, less than, forward slash, etc. So to use these characters in our web page, we need to use the character entities called HTML entities. Below are a few mapping between the reserved character and its respective entity character to be used. So what exactly does this mean? What exactly are they trying to say here? For example, these greater than, less than symbols and the slashes, they are basically reserved characters because every single tag will have the greater than and lesser than, okay, characters in them. So how will the browser understand these are actually not used for a tag right now? These are just used within the text. So for that to happen, in this case, you'll have to use an entity name and the entity number. So below are a few mapping between the reserved character and its respective entity character to be used. This is the character, okay? So this is the character. Entity name is and it. So basically not it, that's LT, lesser than, and entity number and hashtag 60. So you can go with the text or you can go with the number, it doesn't matter, it will give you this same character output in the browser. So this is to just make sure that these characters do not override the tags which are being mentioned, right? So for greater than, it is and GT and hashtag 62. For ampersand and AMP, ampersand AMP and ampersand hashtag 38. And then non-breaking space. So this basically is whenever you leave a space, right? Browser considers it as a single character and leave the space in the browser. But if you don't want that particular space, and if you want to, you can include non-breaking space using this particular entities. Okay, done. Okay, so now what are the different types of lists in HTML? So okay, so I'll just explain this to you guys pretty simply. For example, you can see here one is an unordered list, one is an ordered list. Okay, these are two main kinds of lists. Okay, and there is also a definition and a description list. Okay, so these are not completely inbuilt, which you can basically use. Let me just first explain the unordered and ordered list. Unordered list basically uses a bullet point because it's unordered, it's just a list of pointers. Ordered list will have 1 2 3 in them. And how to write them? If you want to use an unordered list, the tag is ul, so that is basically the tag. So you'll have to use the tag ul, and that is basically the tag. And if you want any list item within that, that's where you'll have to use the tag li, which basically means list item. Okay, so now there is no difference between in the format you write an ordered and an unordered list. The only thing you will have to make sure is in an unordered list you will have to use the tag ul. In an ordered list you will have to use the tag ol. And then coming to the next type of list, which is the definition or a description list. So in this case you will have to use dl, which is a description list. And then if you want a description title, so in this case you want to explain the title as div element, okay, div element. And dd basically is the data, okay, the description data within the description title. So for that it will basically leave a space, it will basically leave a tab and then write it. In this case they're using a hyphen, and this is a block level element, that's why it's giving a tab and starting with the text. Same thing, span element, this is an inline level element, same thing, it's doing the same thing over here. Okay, so these are the three different types of lists in HTML, which it's pretty easy to learn and it's pretty easy to implement. Okay, so first question, what is the difference between the ID attribute and the class attribute of HTML elements? So ID and class are very popular, and also it would be better if we understand a class and ID from a perspective of both HTML and CSS, because if you're using a class and ID in HTML, you would need CSS in order to utilize these two selectors. Okay, so now let's look into that. So class selector, the class selector also matches all the elements on the page that have their class attribute set to the same value as the class. For example, here you can see div class equal to box. Okay, so in this case the class is called box, and in CSS they are basically mentioning it dot box, and inside that they're giving some CSS attributes. Okay, so this particular attribute will be applied to all the elements within this div tag, because they have mentioned the class as box, and box has been mentioned in CSS. Now coming to ID, this selector matches any HTML that has been ID attribute with the same value as that of the selector. In the given example, the provided styles will get applied to all the elements having ID as a container on the page. So classes are mostly used to a complete div tag. ID could also be used individually and also to a complete div tag. In this case, you can see to use a class, you'll have to use the dot, okay, dot box. But if you want to use an ID, you'll have to use the hashtag container. Okay, so multiple elements in HTML can have the same class value, but ID can be only associated with one. That's the only difference. Otherwise, the need for both of them is the same. You want to apply some CSS attributes on them, and in that case, you can go with class or ID. But if you think it's just one piece of code on which you want to apply that, then you can go with class or ID, it doesn't matter. But when you want to apply it to multiple HTML tags, and in that case you want all of those multiple HTML tags to have the same CSS, in that case you can go with class. But if you want all of those multiple HTML tags with to have different CSS style, right, in that case you'll have to go with an ID selector. Okay, so this is the fifth question. Moving on to the sixth question. Describe the HTML layout structure. So each and every web page has different components to display the intended content and a specific UI. But still there are few things which are templated and are globally accepted way to structure the web page. So even though it could be different, there should be a globally structured way. Only then you can use HTML in order to design a web page, right? So in this case, there are mainly six things which are necessary in an HTML layout. Number one, header. Stores the starting information about the web page, the very top. Header stores all of that, the name of the website, and the meta, the character set. So all of that will be stored in the header. And then finally comes the footer, which represents the last section of the page. And then comes navigation, the navigation menu of the HTML page. So you would have seen so many web pages. Navigation basically is the top buttons you get. So there will be notification button, about us page, contact us page. There would be so many buttons, right? So that is the navigation bar. So whenever you click on the navigation menu, it will take you to a different part of the web page. That's basically navigation. The next part is article. So it's a set of information. Okay, it's just regular information. Any website will have information. So that's basically article. Section, it is used inside the article block to define the basic structure of the page. So the article block will use multiple sections to differentiate the content. Okay, so one single article wouldn't make sense. The article, there would be multiple subsections to it. So those are called sections. And finally, a sidebar content of the page. So if you're going into a random web page, most of the web pages which use AdSense, right, Google AdSense, there would be a side banner with an ad in it, or there could be a side banner with for you to fill information in, right? So that's basically a site that will be there all the time. Even though you scroll the page, that part of the web page will be there all the time, and that could be the sidebar content of the page. Okay, so this is a simple HTML layer. It could totally be different. You don't even have to have the side, there is a sidebar content of the page. You don't even need to have that, but that's just an example. Okay, so this is the structure. Now moving on, how to optimize website assets loading. To optimize website load time, we need to optimize its asset loading, and for that there are so many different options. So number one, CDN hosting. So CDN is called a content delivery network. It has geographically distributed servers to help reduce latency. But the problem with CDN is it's a little on the steeper side. If you're using AWS or Azure, you can go ahead with their CDN hosting services. You can host all your content on the CDN, and you can just link it to your web page, and the loading time will be really, really fast. The latency will be really less, but because they're providing these things, and your website will load even faster because the assets are stored somewhere else, it's just quickly loaded on the browser. So for that, obviously there would be some more charge. So if you're using it for a personal purpose, so you'll have to obviously calculate the costs for it. But if it's a company purposes, it wouldn't matter. All companies use CDN in order to do this. Then file compression. So this is the method that helps to reduce the size of an asset to reduce the data transfer. For example, let's say you have a website where people can upload and put their profile picture. So it doesn't make sense to have a 10 megabyte profile picture, right? So there should be a compression algorithm in place which will automatically reduce the size of the image, because the profile picture is going to be a really small icon at the very top. Okay, so that file concatenation, this reduces the number of HTTP calls. So yeah, so all files together could be sent. It doesn't have to be like a different web page will open up every single time you need something. Minify scripts. This reduces the overall file size of JavaScript and CSS files. And yes, reducing the size of the script files, right, will obviously help in optimize the website assets loading, because it will be much, much faster and much, much smoother if JavaScript is minimal, and JavaScript is also in such a way that the website doesn't get affected by like basically running the script files in side by side. Okay. In parallel downloads, hosting assets in multiple subdomains can help to bypass the download limit of 6 assets per domain of all modern browsers. This can be configured, but most general browsers never modify these settings. So basically, if you want parallel downloads, you will have to allow multiple downloads in the browser. So if you allow multiple downloads, it will allow up to 6 assets per domain at the same time. But again, if you want more, then in that case you will have to have multiple locations where you store the data, so that the download is much, much faster. Because if it's from the same location, so more and more workload on the same storage unit will obviously slow down the download process. Finally, lazy loading. Instead of loading all the assets at once, the non-critical assets can be loaded on a need basis. But this is the problem, right? In most websites where their only profit is from AdSense, or their only look forward is to make money, in that case, what they do is they use lazy loading, but they make sure the ads load first, even before the content loads. So in that case, obviously, they're getting the ad revenue. But again, yeah, that's a really bad practice. But lazy loading for a regular website or for a company's website, so all the necessary information can load first, and then the extra graphics, the extra JavaScript elements which have been added could load once the essential things are loaded, right? So that's where lazy loading comes into effect. Okay, now looked at the seventh. Coming to the eighth question. What are the various formatting tags in HTML? So there are so many tags, so let's just look at some of them. It's pretty simple. You can use the B tag for making the text bold, I for italic, EM, it makes the text italic but with added semantics importance. Big increases the font size of the text by 1 unit. Small decreases the font size of the text by 1 unit. Sub makes the text a subscript like X and 2, base of 2 or something like that. Super basically includes like a power 2 power 2. You can mention 2 using sub. Del displays a strikeout text. It just puts a line on that piece of text which you are mentioning. Strong makes it text as important. It also kind of bolds, but it's a different kind of bold. Mark highlights the text. Int basically displays as added text. So it wouldn't be in the same line. It would look like it has been added to it, like a brackets. Okay, so it will be added text. It wouldn't be with the same text element. Okay, so these are some of the various formatting tags. Now moving ahead, can we display a web page inside a web page, or is nesting of web pages possible? Okay, yes, it is absolutely possible. You can do that, and to do that, you'll have to use the iframe tag, and which can achieve this functionality. So to do that, iframe, and you'll have to use src attribute, which basically means source. So the source would be the URL of the page you want to embed. So let's say you have two different web pages and you want to embed another web page within your current web page. You just use iframe src, and then you link that web page's URL over here, and it'll automatically link it for you. Coming at number 10, in how many ways can we specify the CSS styles for the HTML element? So there are three ways: inline. Here we use the style attribute inside the HTML element. Internal, here we use the style tag inside the head tag at the very top to apply the style. We bind the elements using ID or class attributes. And external, here we use the link tag. So we link the CSS file which is externally outside as a separate file to the HTML code, and you basically link it through that. For example, all the examples are shown here. Okay, so inside the h tag you can see there is a style tag, right? So this is basically internal CSS. The CSS internal, but not within the line. For example, in this case, in body, you can see style is equal to padding top 50 pixels. So this is basically inline CSS because it's in line with the tag, which is within the tag itself, and it will only apply for that particular tag and the elements under that tag. Okay, so now style tag, so this is internal, so this is within the HTML page, but it comes with a separate attribute, and the final version is the separate code. So in this case you can see it's demo.css file, and it's an individual CSS file which is linked to this particular HTML code using the link tag. So link href basically is to provide the link of the file name. So you'll have to provide the file name over here, demo.css, and it's a style sheet, and you provide that. That's more than enough to link it, and then you can use it normally. So here they've just provided the code. Okay, over here you can see this is inline style example, internal style, external style. So these are the three types of ways where you can include CSS to your HTML elements. So we've looked at the 10th question. Now moving on. So looking at the 11th question, how to include JavaScript code in HTML. So there are actually multiple ways. The simplest way to do this is using the script tag within the HTML page itself. So this would make the HTML page more dynamic because obviously we are incorporating JavaScript in order to make our HTML page even more dynamic. But in this case, if it's a really longer JavaScript code, in that case, it's better to create a separate JavaScript file and then linking the JavaScript file to HTML. But if it's just one liner or two lines or like a very, very small piece of JavaScript code, it could directly be incorporated within the HTML file using the script. For example, you can look over here and it says script document.getElement by id demo.inner HTML equal to script tag. So in this case, they are basically having an id demo. Okay, so they want to get the element which is inside that particular h1 tag, and they want to get that particular element. Okay, so that is within the script tag itself. Okay, so they are basically trying to demonstrate a particular script tag, how to use this particular script tag within a HTML code. Okay, so this basically will get the element by id within this, and it will display the content which has been entered by us. Okay, so it's a pretty simple JavaScript code in HTML page. So this is one way using the script tag. The other way is to like embed it using a separate JavaScript file. Okay, now moving on to the next question, which is what are forms and how to create forms in HTML. So it's pretty simple to create a form. You just have to use the form tag, but within that you have multiple options to create. Okay, so that's what we're going to look into now. So first of all, to take user input, you will have to use input tag. So you can see here, right? So this tag is for user input. Labels are basically just the text. For example, let's say you're signing up to a page and you would see username, and below username you would see a box where you can enter the actual username, right? So that username text is basically the label, and the box in which you are about to enter your username is basically the input. Okay, so that's how you get those two lines of code in HTML, by providing label and input. Okay, so to start off a form, you basically use the form tag. So forget about this action thing, I'll explain to you. First, you just have to create a form tag. Obviously, an end form tag also is necessary. Within the form tag, you'll have to use label to provide a definition for what exactly is going to be entered in this particular input box, which is an empty input box, right? You're providing label, that is enter your name, and then input type is going to be text, and the name is equal to name. So you're going to enter your name, and the name basically means what is the name of this particular input box and its name. And then comes the enter mobile number, and then input type is equal to number, because we just want a mobile number to be available. Name is equal to mobile number. So why are we providing these names? So these are for external purposes. For example, when we want to address a particular input box or get that particular name, we can use this, right? We can use name and mobile number. So this is just to differentiate between the two different boxes, because if it's the same thing, then you can't differentiate between the two different boxes. Label is just text, it doesn't even matter in this case. Even you don't even need to provide label, but labels will provide a better understanding of what should be entered within the input box. So we are entering the name and mobile number, and then there is a submit button. So you click on the submit button, and then some action happens. So what exactly happens? In this case, we are providing action is equal to submit underscore data.php file. So this particular PHP file will be called upon, right? This data, right? This particular data which you've entered, name and mobile number, and you click on submit. So submit data.php file will be called, and this particular file, submit data PHP file, will run. So this PHP file might have a code where there is a connection to a database, and this particular name and number is entered into a database. And yeah, so that's what happens once the data is entered and you click on submit. So you don't have to worry about anything else. In this case, if you click on submit, it will open and start running the submit underscore data.php file. So whatever purpose or whatever is within that submit underscore data.php file will run, and whatever is the output, that happens, right? But to create a form, you have to use a form tag. Inside that, you can use label and input, and finally you can use a submit button. By using the submit button, when you click on the submit button, it will automatically call up whatever file you have provided in the action attribute in the form tag. Okay, so this is how you create forms. Okay, so now let's move on to HTML5 interview questions. Starting with the first one, what are some of the advantages of HTML5 over HTML? So currently every single person is using HTML5, nobody is using the older version of HTML. So what are the advantages did it provide so that everybody started using HTML5? That's multimedia support. You can easily embed videos, files, images. You can do so many things which HTML couldn't do. It has the capabilities to store offline data using SQL databases and application cache. So instead of storing it just on databases, right, you can store data in offline methods, that is in your local cache as well. JavaScript can be run in the background. It doesn't have to run parallelly, it could be run in the background. HTML file also allows users to draw various shapes like rectangles, circles, triangles, which couldn't be done in HTML. Included new semantic tags and form control tags. So new tags basically started helping a lot of people in order to get more control over the structure of the web page. 14th question, inline and block elements in HTML5. So inline elements just take up the space that is absolutely necessary for the content and does not start a new line. So inline basically means they are in line. They are in the same line. They try to just give you a better understanding of the line, right? You provide a span or strong or select or script. So whatever it is, these are inline tags. You provide it in the line. They don't take up another line. They just do the changes if there are any within the same line, or just be there. Okay, so that is inline. Block elements start a new line and consume the full width of the page available. So for example, div tag, p tag, header tag, video tag, figure tag, fig caption tag. So all of these tags are block tags. So whenever you use a block tag, it will automatically take up the next line. It will automatically start in a new line. Even though you have mentioned all the tags in a single line, it will automatically start in a new line, and that's how it looks in the web page as well. So these are inline and block elements. Coming to the 15th question, how to specify the metadata in HTML5. So to specify, we can use the meta tag, in which again it is a void tag. You don't have to use a closing tag for meta. Some of the attributes used with meta tags, so name, content, HTTP, equip, etc. So the below image tells how to specify the metadata. Let's look at how exactly that works. So meta name is equal to keywords, content is equal to HTML meta tags metadata, meta name description, content meta tag description, meta HTTP equip refresh. So meta HTTP equip cookie, content key 1 equal to value 1, key 2 equal to value 2. So first one, if you see, using meta tag, we can define the keyword and description which can be used by the search engine while indexing the web page for searching. For example, if you want to make sure that your page comes up when a particular keyword is searched, this is where you'll have to enter it. So Google uses these meta tags to make sure that your page is coming up on relevant searches. And then finally, using the refresh and cookie value of the attribute, HTTP equip in meta tag will store the data in cookie and will refresh the page in the 10 seconds as specified in the content value. So it'll be cookies basically help to show you relevant content within the same web page, that so that you, whenever you visit the next time, you don't have to do everything from scratch. That's why you need cookies, and that's why it is also used in the metadata part. So coming to the 16th question, is the data list and select tag the same? So there are two different tags, data list and select. So let's basically understand what exactly is the difference, or is there no difference between them. First of all, yes, they are different, but the select tag will basically give you a list of items from which you can select from. From the name itself, you can get it right. So you just click on the input box and it will automatically give you all the suggestions available, and you can select one suggestion from them. But a data list tag doesn't do that. When you click on it, it doesn't show anything, but when you type something, it will show all the relevant suggestions. Yeah, so in this case, it's a data list. You can see the list name is fruits, name of fruit, ID fruit, that and all is fine. It's just an input. And now you have a data list over here. So data list ID equal to fruits, and option value mango, apple, kiwi, and guava, right? So these are the values which will be in the data list. So whenever you enter something in the data list, if that particular alphabet is within any of these options, it will automatically show those options over here. So in this case, they are typing A, and there are 4 different options, but kiwi does not have A in it, so that's not a valid option. So they are showing mango, apple, and guava over here. You can select them directly from here, or you can type it by yourself as well. Okay. So this is a simple piece of code, and data list and select are completely different. Select will show you, when you click on it, it will show you all the options. You can only select from it. But in data list, you can type and it will show the suggestions and you can choose from that. Okay, moving ahead. So 17th question, define image map. So image map basically is something which is commonly used right now in a lot of websites. So it lets a developer map or link different part of images with different web pages. For example, let's say you have a square image, and the square image is divided into 4 different parts. So the first half, whenever you click on the first half, you want some other web page to open. You click on the second half, some other web page will open. So basically, you want to create 4 different locations in the map. So whichever location you click, it will take you to a completely different website. So how can you do that using HTML? Just within the same image. It's not even 4 different images, it's one single image, but whenever you click in a different part of the image, it will take you to a different website. You can do that, and you can do that by using the map tag provided in HTML5, where you can create clickable areas in the images by providing the coordinates. Over here you can see source, they're providing an image URL, and use map hashtag workspace. So this is just a name to use to identify. So map name is equal to workspace. Okay, so they are going to use this particular image. So inside map, they are providing they want 2 shapes, shape number 1 rectangle, shape number 2 rectangle. Both shapes are rectangle, and providing coordinates over here. Okay, and whenever you click on this particular area, so these are some coordinates, right? There would be a rectangle area created now. So when you click on this particular rectangle area, it will automatically open up xyz.html. Same thing goes in this case. If you click on 10, 120 or 250, 360, so this is again a rectangle coordinate. If you click within this, it will again take you to xyz.html page. So this is how you can create an image map in HTML. It's pretty simple. Take an image, provide the coordinates, and provide href, which is basically a reference link. Whenever you click on that particular part of the image, it will take you to a particular website link which you have provided. Right. So now let's move on to the 18th question. Why do you think the addition of drag and drop functionality in HTML5 is important? How will you make an image draggable in HTML5? Let's first answer the first question. So first of all, to be very simple, drag and drop functionality is one of those features which makes you feel that particular application or that particular website is very user friendly, right? Because you can just drag and drop and it'll automatically start doing the actions, whatever you want it to do, because you don't have to go around selecting things. You just drag the file, drop it over there, and it'll automatically start uploading or processing the image or whatever you want to do with that, right? So drag and drop is more of a feature which makes you feel that the UI is very interactive with you, even though it's a simple feature, right? Even though it's a very simple feature, it will make the user feel like it's very interactive and intuitive to them, right? So that's one of those reasons why drag and drop is necessary. But why exactly is drag and drop functionality in HTML5 very important? So this is similar to what most of the operating systems do. Okay, so it's basically the same as what normal operating systems do. You just copy and drag and drop, and it automatically move the file within different folders, right? So before HTML5, they had to write complex code in order to do this. They had to write code which basically made this possible. But right now, there is already attributes available. You can just use those attributes to make an image or make some files draggable. For example, within the image tag itself, there are different attributes available. So you can see need to set on drop. You have to set on drop. You have to set on drag over. So basically these are actions. On drop, what do you want to happen? On drag over, so you're dragging that particular local file. So while you're dragging it, what should be happening? And attribute to the event handler in the available script. So in the JavaScript, you will have to create two functions, on drop and on drag over, or you can create two random functions with different names. Then you can call them using on drop and on drag over, right? So that you'll have to mention in the JavaScript. And then in the image tag, you will have to use on drop and call that function, and on drag over you'll have to call that function. So whenever that particular file is being dropped or dragged over, a particular function will be called in the JavaScript, and a particular piece of code will run in order for it to do a particular action which you want it to do. Whenever it's dragged, what you want it to happen. Whenever it's dropped, what you want it to happen. That's the thing. Now let's look at a sample piece of code on how exactly we can make an image draggable in HTML5. Okay, over here you can see there is a script tag. So here allow drop, okay, and then there is function drop. So there are two functions, allow drop and drop. Okay, now coming to the HTML part of the basically the body part of the HTML. So div id equal to div1, and here let's just look at the image. So image id equal to drag1. Okay, image source is provided, image logo dot gif. Draggable, it's true. So you'll have to provide this attribute called draggable, and you'll have to make it true so that that particular image becomes draggable in your website. Okay, so with height is regular stuff which you provide to say that the image should be within this size. Okay, so let that be. uh, so the image is draggable. Coming to the next part, div. So id equal to div1. So on drop, drop event should happen. Whenever you drop the image, what should happen? This particular function, drop function, will automatically be called, and the code written within the drop function will execute. On drag over, when it's dragging over, allow drop. Okay, so when it's dragging over, what do you want to happen? Whatever is mentioned within the function allow drop. Okay, so this is what exactly will happen, and this is how you can make your own file or your own image or your own any kind of file draggable in HTML5. So you can try this exact piece of code. Just add some code in the drop file and just run it, and it should work. Okay, so this is the 18th question. Now moving on. The 19th question. Which tag is used for representing the result of a calculation? Explain its attributes. Okay, so this particular tag is, for example, you can easily calculate using JavaScript by entering the code. But in this case, you want it to using HTML5 itself. So there is a tag which you can use to do that particular action. But what is that particular tag? Okay, so the output tag is used for representing the result. The output tag. Okay, you use the output tag and it will represent the result. Over here you can see the output is, and the result, right, the result will be provided over here. Okay, so the example will look like this, but whenever, so this 1 and 2 will be added and the output will show as 3. So over here you can see they have created a form on input result dot value equal to parse int n1 dot value plus parse int n2 dot value. They're providing 1 and 2 as the base values. You can provide any value you want, you can change the values and it will add the value, and once it's calculated, once the value is calculated, it will be in on input, and the output tag can be used to basically print the result in HTML5. So it's pretty simple. You don't have to do anything else in this case. You just use the output and you provide the proper name, okay, and it will automatically display the output for you. So this is the 19th one. And the attributes, different attributes you will have to use is, first of all, for. It defines the relationship between the elements used in calculation and result. Okay. Form, this is used to define the form the output element belongs to. You create a form. So this is for basically creating a form. Name, the name of the output element. Okay, so the name of the output element is basically result, and that's why you are providing result over here, because the result dot value equal to, you are parsing integer values within it, which will be calculated and given. Okay, so that's it. This is the 19th question. Now moving on to the final question, which is explain the concept of web storage in HTML5. So there are so many different ways of storage, but in this case, let's just talk about when you need storage in the browser or in local storage itself. So what are the different ways you can do that in HTML5? What does it support? So this web storage helps in storing some of the static data in the local storage of the browser, so that we do not need to fetch it from the server every time we need it. For example, let's say if it's a very frequently required data, a small piece of data, if you had to fetch that data from the server every single time, obviously the time taken for it to load will increase. But what if you store it in your local storage, that is in your browser or in your local PC itself, and then every time it's required, it just goes to your local PC or to your browser storage and gets it back? That wouldn't require any time, right? Because data is already there, browser it's just fetching it. Okay, so that's what we'll have to do in this case. And also there would be a size limit based on different browsers. You can't store 10 GB of local files from a single website. It could be in KBs or maximum of MBs, right? So this helps in decreasing the load time and smooth user experience. There are two types of web storage that are used to store data locally. This is just for local data storage in HTML5. Local storage and session storage. Local storage is basically when it helps storing data that will be retained even though the user reopens the browser. That basically means the data will get stored in your local PC. Even though you close the browser and restart it, this data will still be in your PC only. It would not be eradicated, and yeah, it would still be there. It's basically kind of permanent data. Like it, you can delete it. I mean permanent in the sense it'll be there until you remove it, but that data will be there even though you close the browser and restart it once again, because it's not stored in the browser, it is stored basically in the local system. The second type of storage is session storage, and this is only for one session only. For example, let's say you're opening a website and you're entering some information in it. So within that session, that data could be there. For example, let's say you're opening another page and coming back to the previous page, that data might still be there. But if you refresh the page or if you close the page and open the website once again, that data won't be there, because that is session storage, and that particular data will be stored only during that particular time period whenever you are accessing that particular website, right? So that is session storage, and session storage is very even smaller than local storage. It would mostly be in KBs, because it's very small amounts of data. KB and MB maximum. It won't go beyond that. So these are the two different types of storage which you can use to store data locally in HTML5. Okay, so I think the questions are pretty clear and the answer also is pretty clear. Let's look at one last question for you guys to answer in the comment section. So, and as it's the comment section itself, so how to comment in HTML. So in the HTML code, what if you want to make a particular piece of code as a comment? Which particular option would you use? Which is the right option? Number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4? Put it in the comment section below. You don't have to type it out. You can just put which is correct, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and we would give you a heart if your answer is correct. Try to answer it on your own first and then go ahead and check in Google if it's right or not, but try to give an honest answer. That's the last part of the session. I hope everything else is clear. Thank you. Meet you in another session.